Devi was born in Gorha ka Purva, in Uttar Pradesh, a remote, inhospitable hamlet not far from Behmai. It is so tiny that it doesn't warrant an appearance on any map. Built up from the banks of the sacred Yamuna River, it is little more than a cluster of mud huts with conical thatched roofs, where sacred cows and bullocks wander as if in a daze through narrow sun-bleached lanes. Like other obscure Indian villages, where more than 500 million people live, Gorha ka Purva forms part of what was once the Gandhian ideal and is still habitually called the real India. And Phulan in her early years was not unlike typical Indian women, some 70% of whom are born and die in villages not unlike Gorha ka Purva. The typical village woman in northern India receives her inheritance at birth, that of being an unwanted burden, because she is not a son. She comes from a peasant family that owns less than an acre of land, or from a landless family whose existence depends on a landlord's whim. She can neither read nor write, though she often would like to do both. She has rarely travelled more than 20 miles from the village of her birth. If she falls ill, she believes it is because of evil spirits lurking in trees. Her sole worth lies in producing sons and working in the fields for a meal and the equivalent of 50 cents a day. She is born into a caste, geography, and poverty from which there is no escape. Once she marries, at 14 or 15, her life is fixed, her future becomes her mother's past. In her village, practically everything will turn on caste, the refined form of apartheid introduced into India over 2500 years ago. Its Brahmanical order will define, with few exceptions, the social, economic, and occupational status she will have for her entire life. Caste etiquette will specify what she and her family may eat, how her marriage will be performed, the length of her sari, and what ornaments she may wear, whether or not she may draw water from the village well, and through which door she may enter a temple if she may enter it at all. Caste even determines whether or not a man may carry an umbrella in the real India. Phulan's father, Devi Deen, whom she described as a simpleton, was better off than some in Gorha ka Purva. He owned about an acre of land. Even so, he had to work as a sharecropper to support his growing family. He and his wife, Mula, had the terrible fortune to produce 4 daughters. Phulan was the second oldest before they finally achieved a son. And all manner of other frustrations befell Devi Deen. He had lost nearly all of his inheritance, including some 15 acres of land, to an elder brother and the brother's son, Mayadin, both of whom were far wilier and better connected politically in Gorha ka Purva was. But he was too old, too tired, too poor, he told his family, to struggle for anything. The young Phulan was shocked and outraged. When she was 10, she began an often lonely battle to reclaim the family land. A spirited and precocious child, with a sharp tongue and wit, she taunted her cousin Mayadin in the village square, hurling profanities at him and accusing him of all nature of things in front of his upper caste friends. Then, along with her elder sister, who had just turned 12, she effected a sit-in on Mayadin's land. It was short-lived. Mayadin arrived and, according to Phulan, beat her unconscious with a brick. When she was 11, at the insistence of Mayadin, Phulan was married to a widower 3 times her age from a distant village in exchange for a cow. Despite her age, her husband forced himself upon her and beat her frequently. She left him shortly after her 12th birthday. Walking across an area the width of Texas, alone and terrified, and usually in tears, she finally reached Gorha ka Purva. Her parents were distraught. Women don't leave their husbands in the real India. What can we do? Her mother wailed. You have heaped disgrace upon us all. There is no alternative. You must commit suicide. Go jump in the village well. Phulan didn't jump, though she considered it, and she came of age in Gorha Ka Purva. Over the next 10 years, she alternately fled the village and returned. During adolescence, she married one of her cousins, Kailash, who was already married. Consequently, the union did not last long. She cut the grass on her family's plot and grazed its water buffalo. She developed a reputation for promiscuity and became known as a scorned woman who bathed naked in the Yamuna alone. All the while she continued her land battle with Mayadin. When she was 20, she argued her father's case before the Allahabad High Court. The following year, in 1979, Phulan, then 21, was arrested on the basis of what she told me was a fraudulent charge of robbery at Mayadin's home. She spent a month in police custody, where she was beaten and raped as large numbers of Indian women are. Many of the policemen who assaulted her were men whom Mayadin counted as his friends. That Phulan was left a whimpering piece of rubbish in the corner of a dirty room, with rats staring me in the eye, Phulan later said. But it was the evening of the day of the festival of Sawan Dui, in early July of that year, that was the turning point in Phulan Devi's life. She had heard rumors, as had everyone in the village, that a gang of dacoits, led by a notoriously cruel man named Babu Gujar, was encamped on the riverbank. She may or may not have received a letter from the gang threatening to kidnap her or to cut off her nose, a not uncommon punishment inflicted on women for a perceived indiscretion in the villages of northern India. It was just past midnight, and Phulan was nearly asleep in her family's home when she heard the thud of boots. Men carrying torches sprang into silhouette against the hut's mud walls. What followed remains obscure, for Phulan's own accounts have varied significantly. Whatever the truth of that evening, Phulan was marched out of Gorha Ka Purva and into the ravines. Perhaps she had indeed been kidnapped. Perhaps Mayadin had paid the dacoits to take her away. Perhaps she was trying to protect her young brother, whom she adored. Or perhaps she simply walked away from her life in real India. For the next 72 hours, she was brutalized by Babu Gujar. Then, on the evening of the third day, his chief lieutenant and deputy, Vikram Mallah, who had admired Phulan from afar over the years, shot Babu Gujar dead. Word of the killing spread throughout the ravines, as did the fact that Vikram Mallah, a member of Phulan's caste, had not only slain his upper caste leader, but had assumed the leadership of the gang. Phulan became his mistress, and in the villages and towns of the Chambal River Valley, where for generations people have taken their own revenge and settled their own scores, killing and maiming in the name of justice and God, women composed songs about the exploits of the low-caste village girl who became a dacoit and was vindicated, her honor restored. Phulan, for her part, had a rubber stamp made, which she used as a letterhead, Phulan Devi, Dacoit Beauty, beloved of Vikram Mallah, Emperor of Dacoits. Vikram taught her everything she knows. Khushwant Singh, a distinguished editor and author who was among the first to attempt to piece together the contradictory accounts of Phulan's life, told me one February morning over tea. He was a handsome young chap, fair, tall, and wiry, and was obviously very taken with her. He had her long hair cropped, and bought her a transistor radio and a cassette recorder, as she was inordinately fond of listening to music from films. He also taught her how to handle a gun. She became a crack shot. Vikram also told her, according to a popular ballad still sung in the villages, if you are going to kill 20, not just one. For if you kill 20, your fame will spread. If you kill only one, they will hang you as a murderess. Over the next year, Vikram and Phulan led their gang through the badlands of India, the sandy ridges, ravines, and jungles of Uttar and Madhya Pradesh long controlled by the dacoits, an area that covers some 8,000 square miles. They robbed and looted, held up trains, ransacked upper caste villages and homes, murdered and kidnapped. Each operation, at Phulan's insistence, was preceded and followed by an excursion to one or another of a string of temples hidden away from public view, all honoring the goddess Durga. Phulan's instincts had never failed her, and in her mind, it was because Durga directed and protected her. Vikram came to rely increasingly on her sometimes uncanny ability to interpret omens and signs. When asked at a press conference following her surrender in 1983 if she had ever known fear, Phulan replied, "Every day I have lived with fear. One night in the jungle, I was sitting by our campfire and felt something slithering on my thighs. I realized it was a snake. I quickly picked it up and threw it aside, but I knew that it was an ill omen, so we picked up our guns and ran. 10 minutes later, we saw lights of a strong police contingent at our campsite. God sends His own signals." On a summer night in August of 1980, soon after the festival of Sawan Dui, during the monsoon rains, Phulan pleaded with Vikram to leave. But that time he didn't indulge her, and they went to bed. There was a loud noise, the sound of a bullet being fired. Vikram sat up suddenly, and I thought the police had surrounded us. I reached for our rifles, but they had been removed. Then, Vikram fell forward. A second shot followed, and Vikram died, his head in Phulan's lap. His assassins were two dacoit brothers, who only a few days earlier had rejoined the gang, after a stint in prison. Their names were Shri Ram and Lala Ram. Vikram Malla's murder was in revenge for the death of the gang's former leader, Babu Gujar. Phulan Devi is said never to have fully recovered from Vikram Malla's death, and she has always adamantly refused to discuss what followed next. But it is known from reliable witnesses that she was gagged and perhaps chloroformed, and her legs and arms were bound, before Shri Ram and Lala Ram threw her into a boat. The boat set sail down the Yamuna. There Phulan was locked in a filthy, darkened hut, where she was held captive for 3 weeks. Every evening, shortly after midnight, a man whom she could not see would open the door, and others would follow, one by one. They were tall, silent, turbaned Thakur men, and they would rape her until she lost consciousness. On the 23rd day of her captivity, Phulan was dragged out of the shed by Shri Ram and Lala Ram. Bruises covered her body, her hair was filthy and matted, and her eyes were dead. Shri Ram demanded that she fetch him water from the village well, where the Thakur men had assembled, jeering and hooting. From behind shuttered windows, their women looked down on the village square. When Phulan refused to fetch the water, Shri Ram kicked her savagely and ripped off the blanket she wore. Naked, she limped to the village well. The men of Behmai are said to have laughed and spat on her. Late that evening, after Shri Ram and Lala Ram had left for the ravines, Santosh Pandit, a friend of Phulan's and a priest from a nearby village, quietly entered the shed where she was being held and carried her to safety in the back of a bullock cart. With the help of Man Singh, a fellow dacoit, she subsequently formed her own gang. 17 months later, on Saint Valentine's Day, she returned to Behmai. The facts about the 1981 Saint Valentine's Day massacre are generally not in dispute. It took place in the hamlet of Behmai, which is set on the banks of the sacred Yamuna River. No one in Behmai paid any special attention to a group of about 20 people, dressed in police uniforms, as they crossed the Yamuna River that afternoon. The party was led by a young girl, unusual, the villagers thought. She was dressed in the khaki coat, with 3 silver stars of a deputy superintendent of police, blue jeans, and boots with zippers. The group of outsiders sat down and prayed. Then, as the men dispersed, some sealing the village off, the girl jumped onto the parapet of the village well, switched on her megaphone, and, according to testimony given to the police, began to shout, "Listen, you guys. If you love your lives, hand over all of the cash, silver, and gold you have." Phulan said, "I know that Lala Ram Singh and Shri Ram Singh rival dacoits are hiding in this village. If you don't hand them over to me, I will stick my gun into your butts and tear them apart." After a search of nearly an hour, her men returned to the well. They had found no trace of the Ram brothers. All the villagers denied ever having seen the two men. "You are lying," the girl screamed through her megaphone. "I will teach you to tell the truth." She ordered that all the young men in the village be rounded up, and some 30 were dragged to the well. She spat on them and warned them again, "Unless you tell me where those bastards are, I will roast you alive." The men pleaded with her and swore that they had never seen the brothers. Her captives stood in a line before the well, and she walked slowly, deliberately, down it, tearing off their turbans in a rage, and hitting many of them in the genitals with her rifle butt. Who actually gave the order to march the men out of Behmai remains a matter of dispute, but they were marched in single file to the river. At a green embankment, they were ordered to kneel, their faces turned to the earth. Bursts of gunfire followed. The bodies of the 30 men crumpled and fell. 22 were dead. It was the largest dacoit massacre since the founding of modern India. And it was triply shocking because of its scale, because it was led by a woman, and because a woman of lower caste murdered men of a vastly higher one. Phulan was charged with as many as 48 crimes, including 30 charges of dacoity, banditry, and kidnapping. Her trial was delayed for 11 years, during which time she remained in prison as an under trial. She was finally released on parole in 1994 after intercession by Vishambhar Prasad Nishad, the leader of the Nishadha community. The government of Uttar Pradesh, led by Mulayam Singh Yadav, withdrew all cases against her. This move shocked the country and became a matter of public discussion and controversy. Phulan later married Singh. Singh contested the 2004 and 2009 elections on Indian National Congress's ticket. In 2014, he contested election on Bahujan Samaj Party's ticket. Phulan's sister Munni Devi later accused him of being involved in Phulan's murder. At 1:30 p.m. on 26 July 2001, Devi was shot dead by 3 masked gunmen outside of her Delhi bungalow. She was hit 9 times, variously in the head, chest, shoulder, and right arm. Her personal security guard, Balinder Singh, was shot in his right chest and right arm. Devi was taken to Ram Manohar Lohia Hospital, but was declared dead. The prime suspect, Sher Singh Rana, later surrendered to the police. Rana allegedly claimed to have murdered Devi in revenge for the upper caste men she gunned down in the Behmai massacre. Hero or killer? Leave a comment, let me know what you think.